Jeff Bernard with Solve Systems, and today our intern Kevin Lee is going to show you how to integrate Business Central into Power BI to understand the effectiveness of using Shopify POS with Business Central. Really cool. So if you want us to develop the solution for you, please reach out. We'd be more than happy to get into your organization and give you the solution. Have a good one.
All right. So for this video, we are going to make a Shopify dashboard using Power BI. And we are going to try to make something that looks similar to this, where we have our data shown in cards on the left and then some visualizations and slicers so that we can manipulate and look at our data through different parameters. Okay. And so first things first, we have to start a new blank empty report. With this empty report, we can load in our data by going to here, get data, and using any one of these options. Or what I did for this specific report is using Dynamics 365 Business Central. Once you have your data source loaded in, the first thing we need to do is to have some way to identify that if an order in our data source is going to be a Shopify order or a BC order. So some data tables already have that specified, but to differentiate on this specific example, we are going to insert a column here. And inside this column, we're going to name it order type. Order type will take a condition where if in our table where we have a column called Shopify order number, if Shopify order number exists for that order, then we're going to give it a value of Shopify. If it doesn't exist, we have to check if it's a Business Central order. So to do that, we check in our table in the location code. If the location code is CA retail, we can list it as BC. If not, we can list it as other. And so once we commit this DAX query, we will get a new column showing which orders are Shopify and which ones are BC. This is for this specific data source, and it may be different for when you are working with yours. But once we have that, we can look up order type, and it'll be right here in our data source. If we click the order type, and we can load in our document date as well, we're shown a table here on the left with all the differing data types. Let me organize this in a more readable date, and we can go here into filters to filter out what we need. Here in order type, we can see that there are 151 Shopify orders in our data source and 20,000 BC orders, and then about 100,000 others. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this and move on to visualizing different measurements. So now that that's removed, we can go ahead and create our measurements. I want to make a measurement for the total amount of Shopify orders that we have, which is around 150, and the total amount of BC orders, which is about 20,000. I also want to count and measure how many total orders there are, and then the percentages for Shopify and Business Central orders. To do this, we need to go into modeling and do a new measure. In our new measure, we can go ahead and calculate our total orders first by giving our measure a name of total orders equals calculate, and calculate evaluates an expression. And you can include a filter, but that is optional. For calculating the total amount of orders, we just need to count the rows, because in the table that we are using, each row represents an order. And so we can count rows. We can count the rows of our table, which is posted, sales, invoice, Excel. We are not going to feed in a filter, and we're just going to return it like that. So in our data here, we can search up our calculation name, and it'll be right here, total orders. We can visualize that by clicking on it and giving it some visualization. For this example, I'm going to be using a card, right? So this is our total orders. Now that we have our total orders, right now is a good time to add in a slicer. So a slicer is found here under our visualizations, And what the slicer does is it lets us to adjust our data shown on our report. For this specific slicer, I'm going to be using a document date. And with this column, we can specify what is the total amount of orders between these two dates. We can use the slider to give those dates. You can also adjust the specific type of slicer you want in these visualizations. But I'm gonna keep it as that for now. Now that we have our total orders, we need to calculate our total amount of BC orders and our total amount of Shopify orders. So in modeling, we're gonna go to a new measure again, and this time we're gonna call it total BC orders. We're gonna calculate some expression. The expression we're gonna use is going to be the same expression where we're counting the rows in our table, which is posted sales invoice. However, this time we're going to feed in a filter. We want to only count the rows where the order type of that row is BC, since we only want the BC values. So to do that, we feed in our table. Then we can feed in the column that we created earlier called order type. We want to make sure that order type equals BC. That's how we know that it's a BC order. And then we can end our query there. I'm going to copy this for our Shopify as well. And we can set this. Actually, we'll keep it like that. All right. And now we can go in here, search up total, and our total BC order is here. Make it a card. And here it shows us that we have 11,000 total BC orders. Let's do the same thing for our Shopify orders. So I'm going to paste it. Total Shopify. And then instead of BC, we're going to only count the rows where that value is Shopify. All right. And now that we have Shopify, we can go ahead and click there, make it a card, and it is blank right now. And the reason why it's blank is because within this date, within the start and end date, there is no Shopify orders. You can adjust the query to point it as 0 if there's none. But for now, we'll just stretch it over until there are some Shopify orders, right? And we probably want to only show, since it's a Shopify dashboard, we only want to show the total Shopify orders if the Shopify orders exist, right? So we don't want anything before around here. And so to find that, we can go ahead and do order type here, document date here. Now that we have that, we can go through our filters and find the order type of Shopify. And the oldest date for Shopify is around February 26. So we can put this at 26. Nice. Okay, cool. Now that we know that February 26, 2024 is where we want to be, we can set a filter for our slicer here, saying that in advanced filtering, if it is on or after February 26 of 2024, we can start only there. So nothing will be shown before that date, so that at the very least there will be at least one Shopify order in our report. Okay, so we're gonna move on and do our percentages. And so to do that, we're going to insert more measurements. Our measurements are going to be called percent BC. And to calculate percentage, we want to divide. Division takes the first parameter being a numerator, the second being a denominator, and the third being an alternate result. Our first numerator, since we are finding the percent BC, is by feeding in total BC orders in the hard brackets. For our denominator, we can use total orders, or we can do total BC orders plus total Shopify orders, depending on what you want your report to show. So that's our percent BC. We're going to do the same thing for our percent. Oh, we also should make this a percentage. So if you click on your data here, you click on the data here, and where is it? Click on data here, and you can click percent there. And this will turn it into a percentage, which is what we want. Because by default, it is a decimal. All right. And now let's make our second measurement for the percent Shopify. Equals divide. Our numerator is going to be total Shopify orders, and then it's going to be divided by total BC orders plus total Shopify orders. Right? Nice. And then we're going to make this a percent as well. Very cool. And so if we take this and feed it as a card, and take this and feed it as a card, we're going to have 93% and 43.2% for our percentages. Nice. So now we have some measurements that we can work with, and it's visualized here, and you can get a real-time analysis of the measurements, but it is also helpful to do some actual visualizations with some graphs. And so the first one, being the most obvious, is probably a donut or pie graph, since we're working with percentages. And so using a pie chart, we can feed in our 2%, and we get a visualization like this. This is the default configuration, but if you want to adjust it visually to fit your brand's aesthetic, you can go here under visualizations. In your build visual, you can change the data values here, or here you can go ahead and change the different slices, the colors, the detail labels, and over here you can check if it is using the background or not, if you want to add a visual border and adjust it to your needs. Another graph we should probably use is a line graph. So we're going to add in a line graph here. Once we have added in the line graph, we can go ahead and feed in our values. We want the total BC orders and total Shopify orders for our y-axis. We also want the document date, right? And here it is. This is our line graph for the data. We can also change the document date here if you want it to be just the date itself or the date hierarchy. You can also change the name here to put dates. And you can also, under here, add some zoom sliders so that you can fine tune whatever data you are looking for, right? So there's a lot of different visualizations you can play with to make your Shopify graph, but these two are really the main players, and a slicer here so that you can adjust it. And so after some configuration, you can end up with this, where the cards simply just have rounded corners and changed colors, and the line graphs and donut cards can show as is. All right, and that's pretty much it.